Hello to everybody who is joining us now. We're going to get ready to begin this afternoon's webinar. And before we dive into the content of the webinar, I want to share a little bit of logistical and technical information to help everybody have a successful time. So we are here as part of the Innovation Pathways community and a collaboration between the Center for Collaborative Ed and DESE, offering technical assistance and professional development for the Innovation Pathways community of practice. This webinar will be recorded today so that we can post it after the fact on our technical assistance website. And if you would like to take advantage of live closed captioning during the webinar today, you can do that by looking in the upper left-hand corner of your Zoom screen for a little button that says live in red. If you click on the little arrow to the right, that will give you options for viewing those closed captions in real time. And again, as we are arriving, we want to get into the mindset for our program today by asking everyone to do a little reflection on your own experience as an employee. So if you would like to post in the chat your first paid work experience, you can share the name of the employer if you wish, and what your role was in your first paid work experience. So just take a moment to do that. So you can keep adding your contributions to the chat. We're gonna check with some of our webinar participants in a moment to respond to what they're seeing. But first I want to introduce you because we have some special presenters with us today, in addition to the usual members of the Innovation Pathways team. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Annie Leonard, and I'm the Innovation Pathways Consultant with the Center for Collaborative Education. And I'm joined today by two other CCE colleagues. They are Allison and Phoenicia, and both Allison and Phoenicia provide tech support and production support that helps these webinars go well. So if you find yourself in need of any technical assistance during the course of the session, please feel free to send a message in the chat to Allison. Phoenicia is new to CCE, so don't send her any questions just yet, but she will be helping us out going forward with other Innovation Pathways community of practice programs in the coming months. So we're really happy to have Phoenicia and Allison here. And I want to pass to my DESE colleague, Jennifer Gwatkin, to introduce herself.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I apologize in advance. I am under the weather, so hopefully it doesn't sound like I'm a frog, but great to see you here. And I'm actually going to scan the list of folks to see if any of my colleagues from DESE are here. Oh, looks like I'm the only one. I'll let you know if anyone does join, but thanks for taking time out of your afternoon to be with us on this important topic. Really excited to have Karen and Mike here with us.
Right, so as Jennifer mentioned, we have two guest presenters here today to really give firsthand expertise to our perspectives about building and sustaining strong employer partnerships. So I'm going to pass to Karen to briefly introduce herself.
Hi everyone, I'm Karen Aris. I'm the internship coordinator at Bellingham High School. That role is actually new to me here this year. Been here since late August. Formerly a worked in the nonprofit world of a manufacturing training center where we worked with high school students in the manufacturing space, as well as former school district where I helped innovation pathways in biomedical science and manufacturing as well. So happy to be here.
Thank you, Karen. And we also have Michael Rubin, principal of Uxbridge High School today. I think Mike just joined the webinar. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, no, I'm good to be here. This is Mike Rubin. I'm the principal at Uxbridge High School. In my 8th year at Uxbridge, we have been in the innovation pathway movement, I guess, since its onset. We were one of the first 4 schools to earn a designation that I think remains fairly robust. We now have 4 pathways at our school. They form really a strong basis of a lot of our programming, as do a lot of our business partnerships. And with Karen as a neighbor, in a couple of different ways, we've worked together actually on a lot of fronts over the past few years. So hopefully we'll say something enlightening and exciting for everybody this afternoon. Certainly
right.
one half of us will, and that's going to be Karen. I'll just try and not ruin anything she says.
I'll add that to our workshop goals slide when we get there in a second. So if you have attended previous programs, you've heard a little bit about the Center for Collaborative Education. We're a national impact-driven organization that works with schools, districts, and communities to increase educational equity, and a proud partner with DESE, providing technical assistance for the Innovation Pathways community. Aside from allowing the brilliance of our presenters to shine through today, our goals for this workshop are to enable you to explore models for engaging with, building, and sustaining relationships with employer partners and other external partners to support your innovation pathway programs. And as always, we want to support your building connections across the Innovation Pathways designee network. So we're going to do that by completing the phase that we're in now, which is welcome, introductions, and connections. We'll have a brief activity focusing on trying to get into the mindset of the employers that we partner with. And then as soon as possible, we'll dive into some presentations from our 2 guest presenters, Karen and Mike, hopefully allowing at least 15 minutes for Q&A with them. What we'd like to do is invite you to put questions into the chat as they occur to you. And so we'll pause after Karen's slides and take a look at the chat for any questions that are specific to Karen and the content that she's sharing. And then we'll hear from Mike, and then we'll go into a more free-form Q&A towards the end of the program. But in terms of getting into the mindset of employers, we wanted to offer everyone a chance because most of the people with us today in the audience are school affiliated. It's important that we try to think about how this work looks from the perspective of the employers that we partner with. So we pulled these 3 quotes directly from employers who have participated in Innovation Pathways programs in the past, so that you could hear in the voices of employers, what are they thinking about? What's important to them when they are thinking about their partnership with schools to form innovation pathways? So if you can put yourself into the shoes of a current employer that you partner with, or a prospective employer that you would like to build a partnership with, take a moment to think about that employer's biggest reasons for participating in an innovation pathway. Or in other words, what is the value proposition for employers? So think a little bit about that, and then you can type responses into the chat. And we've got a couple of folks monitoring the chat, but especially for Jennifer and Karen and Mike, if you're able to watch what's coming up in the chat and feed some of that back to the group and respond, we would love to hear about it.
Seeing a lot about building the future workforce, feeding pipelines, a way for employees to give back. Yeah, investing in local economy. Oh, Keith Wright, helping our high school become an opportunity factory. I like that. And looking out for the employee, making sure that the employee will not be overburdened by taking on a student. Filling community service hours in a meaningful way. Growing local network of connections among the community. These are all good. Brand awareness with community. Interacting with other business leaders. For sure, the networking component.
That's great. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Jennifer. I am looking forward to hearing more about this. Feel free to add to the chat as we go on to help you be really focused on what you can learn from today that you can apply in the work that you're doing to build partnerships. So as you know, we have two guest presenters, and we are going to begin with Karen. We've asked our presenters today to focus on strategies and lessons learned while they have been immersed in this process of building pathways and building and sustaining employer partnerships. So I will pass over to Karen, who is going to present first.
Okay, thank you. So as Annie said, I'm going first, and I'm going to talk a little bit about where we are now at Bellingham High School, and we are a new innovation pathway designee as of last spring, 2023. So you can advance the next slide, Annie. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about me. That's me and my beautiful family. My daughter is a sophomore at University of New Hampshire. My son is a senior in high school and just became an Eagle Scout this past summer. That's my cool cat, Chewy. She is so cool. And she's our COVID kitty. And we love to go to New Hampshire all times of the year, winter, summer, and I'm an avid runner. And I've run one marathon, so that's a little bit about me. So at Bellingham High School, we have two new innovation pathways. One is in healthcare and social assistance, and the other is in manufacturing. I have a new role here as internship coordinator, and it's a little bit more than just internships. Obviously, I have to seek out employer partners, so that's one of my main roles. Internships both within the building and externally, within, specific, like teachers have internships and interns and so forth. arranging career speakers and panelists, working with kids on their soft skills, on all the critical components like resumes, interviews, and professional communication, especially before they go out into the community. Doing career certifications, especially things like some of the things we'll talk about, like OSHA or personal care assistants and things like that that go along with our innovation pathways, making sure the kids have them and how to get them within our school. Helping with the career fair, which we have in the spring, helping with dual enrollment and MOUs for different community colleges and colleges, and then other programs for trade certifications and things like apprentice programs and so forth. So that's a little bit about what I do. I'm going to talk a little bit about where I am with business partners in like literally the first 2 months of school, so you can kind of get an idea of where we are. So back in the spring when we were applying for Innovation Pathways status, our administration and our counseling team reached out to a bunch of community partners, not to mention we had a career fair, so that really kind of helped with people who had the potential to be involved. But also we started a job board here, and that's another thing that I am managing. And Salmon Health and Retirement came to us probably early September looking because they really need workers. And we talked to them about just basically they wanted to post a job for dining room servers. And then we got to talking about our healthcare pathway. And so I didn't even have to sell that. They were like, we need to be involved with you. And so we are kind of developing a pilot program that we want to get started in this next semester in the spring, where we would identify a cohort of students for them to train and certify as personal care attendants at Salmon Health Retirement Living Facility. That would start out as an internship and then move on to part-time work because of course they are invested and they're going to invest their time into the students. So these students need to show kind of a commitment. So it needs to be we need to do some vetting of students as we go, but we're in the initial stages of working with this awesome partner. So we're excited about that. And one of our students is looking specifically for human resource administration as a career. So they're hoping to help her as well. One of the things that I wanted to kind of emphasize with this partner is that they already have established a co-op program with a local folk tech school. So they're used to working with schools. And they have already said that they were very much a family company and that they want to work with our students as employees and they want them to realize how much they can grow there. So even if they don't like being a personal care attendant, that doesn't mean that they have to leave that job. They can find something else for them to do because they want to invest in them and they want them to work at their place. So it's really cool. The other partner that we have potentially solidified is the YMCA, and they're also right down the street from us. They came to our career fair as well, and some of our students already work there part-time. So what they are going to do is to train and certify our students in active threat, CPR, first aid, and child abuse prevention. And basically, like any other employee would, get trained, and then the different programs that they can get involved in. So there's a variety of kind of fits our social assistance pathway is early childhood or chronic disease programs or a personal trainer. So, and again, they were very open to taking a couple of students as interns this spring. For manufacturing, Again, I also feel very lucky that we're kind of in the midst of a great community, as there's lots of engineering and manufacturing facilities within 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes of our school. But Antron Engineering is a small family company, and they came to our career fair in this spring. I have recently went to meet with them, and they are excited to have our students in for a tour. They also have some young employees that they want to have like a career panel for our specific students in this pathway. One is an engineering student at the University of Connecticut, and he had worked there during a summer, probably like 2 summers ago, and that every school break he comes back to work there. So they want him to come talk to our students. And then they have, another young adult who did not go to college, but is kind of making his way up the career path, who entered Antron right as a machinist, and you get trained as a machinist right out of high school. So both of those 2 young adults we feel are great role models to speak to our students about the different pathways that they can enter this field. And then we're going to work with them to have 1 to 2 interns this coming spring. Our next community partner in manufacturing, we're hoping to be Thermo Fisher Scientific, which is in the complete opposite spectrum of engineering, Antron Engineering. They're a global company. And I just had an initial discussion with them last week, but they also have a site in Franklin, which is about 10 minutes away from our high school. They are very interested in having a pilot internship this spring, and I had connected with them because of a friend who I have in the human resources. So that's going to come up in my other slides, is don't be afraid to use your own connections to find these community partners. So basically, in my whole scheme of this discussion, my title on the side of my slide is, okay, I need a business partner now. What should I do? So basically, when you're approaching someone or a business to help work with you, obviously you want to have an idea what the company is all about before you even approach them, and think about your ask, right? If you just go in and say, we'd like to place some, interns in there, that's like a really big ask without even knowing putting your toes in the water about how you're going to work with them first, like some of the other things I mentioned. How can we work together? How can we establish a relationship? What's in it for me? What's in it for you? And so basically, all these things that you said in the chat about, especially right now, the time is extremely ripe. Everyone needs help. And everyone I've asked has basically said, sure, we would love to work with you. So having your students in there for a tour, because again, the majority of our students do not know what's out there. They're only in high school. They know everything that you put in the chat: babysitting, working at the grocery store, working at Dunkin' Donuts. They are not, this is getting them out into the real world. So getting them into the companies to see what it's like, having a career panel, having the professionals at the specific industry or business be a judge for you on student projects. That's a great way for them to get involved and give the students real world feedback. Submit a project. They can submit a project to a specific class to have them give feedback. Also participate in mock interviews. A couple of people have already suggested that they would love to do that. At Salmon Health and Retirement, they're going to obviously interview the students before they accept them for the personal care assistant cohort. And then lastly, work-based learning or internship. So I would suggest you work up to that step. And then another thing is, what I was just saying is I find, in my personal opinion, that smaller companies are, they don't have as many layers and they might be easier to work with, and can have student, or can work around some of those bigger policies and things like that. If you're working with a larger company, for example, in a previous employer of mine, we had an apprenticeship program that we had owned by a German company, and we had to sign so much paperwork, but it ended up getting done. It's just sometimes it's easier to work with a smaller company. Then I would say focus on one or two, like if we have 2 pathways. So right now, for me, just focusing on really 2 strong business partners per pathway is totally fine. Because it can really dive deeper into those relationships and have those other entities come for all those other things I just mentioned, the career panels and the projects and so forth. Let's say use MassHire. They're great. If you don't know anybody, they can certainly help find you somebody. And that's what they do, especially they're very familiar with Innovation Pathway schools, and they can help connect you to businesses. Also, in our virtual world, don't be afraid to ask about a virtual internship. Some of the kids also, with transportation issues and things like that, it's a real thing, right? And students, we're in a virtual world right now, participating in this webinar. So it can probably be done. Excuse me, I'm just gonna take a drink. LinkedIn, huge friend. I put things out there all the time. I know Mike does too. And you find people that want to help you. Parents, another huge thing. Put a survey out to your parents to see who can help you. I know when I've had to get judges for science fairs in the past, or I've done a STEM fair for girls in STEM, all these awesome women and mothers and aunts and cousins, all of those things that are willing to help you out in a specific career opportunity. And then don't forget about your community. We have a very strong community here that I've really been blessed to find in the last 2 months. I mean, the fire department wants internships, the library wants internships. So if you're thinking, even if you have like an IT program, your school business office might want them, your finance department for the town. So that's a really viable option as well. And then lastly, I'd say partner with other schools, because I know, especially here in the Blackstone Valley, there's only so many partners, right? And they're gonna spread their selves thin. So and I think it's a really great opportunity for students to meet other students from other buildings and other schools. They're in the same program as them, and you can really create a rich network if you're partnering with other schools. So, and then of course, we always want to create an important lesson for our students and have them reach out with professional emails or letters. We are having a really cool thing that we're doing this fall for both of our pathways, is we're having a career speaker for 4 sessions, September through December. It's like 1 engineer per pathway, and they're forming deeper and deeper connections with them each month. 1 month might have been they get a half an hour virtual presentation on their background and how they chose engineering and what they do. And then the next month is a little bit more about their company and so forth. So, and they the students give these speakers specific background, so then they tailor the next month the month's presentation as into what the students want to hear. And one of them works for Pfizer, so it's been amazing. So we're definitely going to have all the kids write personal letters and send them out as a big pack, because this person has taken a lot of their, professional time to devote to our school. And so it's also a really important lesson for your students. And then obviously it's a win-win that you're partnering with your industry connection and your community partner. So use social media, highlight them, talk to it about at the school committee, and put an article in the local paper or what have you, because it's all about, the more people know what great things you're doing at your school, the more, then that can also spark more partnerships as well. People go, oh, I want to work with them. I want them to help me. So it's a little bit of what I have. I'm going to toss it over to my pal, Michael Rubin.
Just before Mike dives in, I want to ask the folks who are monitoring the chat if there's anything that's come up that's a specific question for Karen that she should address before we move on.
I don't see any specific questions for Karen, but just want to take this opportunity to thank folks for their good comments that they've been adding. Keep them coming.
Great. Okay. Mike.
Sorry, can I send you an updated slide deck? Or
It's gonna
or can you enable screen sharing for me?
Screen share we can do, right?
Yeah, I think we can. I think the best bet would be to enable screen sharing for you so that you can share the ones that you have there.
That would be super.
All right.
All right.
Should be able to now.
Yes, thank you. So thanks everyone, and thanks Karen for stealing a lot of the great ideas that I was going to address. So I am going to attempt to not be too redundant and talk a little bit more in terms of some global steps that can sometimes be helpful in both identifying workforce partners and then leveraging those experiences so they work well for both business and school alike. A little bit about me. So I'm a girl dad. I have two girls. They're actually a little young in that picture. The top picture, a couple of years ago, I was the Massachusetts High School Principal of the Year, and I am often like to show that picture because I'm with my parents, and they were both educators. My dad taught in the Malden Public Schools for 40 years and taught math. And that's Petey. That's Petey yesterday on Monday. He was a bat for Halloween. He looks more intimidating than he actually is. And in the bottom picture, if you ever find yourself with nothing to do on a weekend and you feel like tuning on ESPN Plus, you might catch a broadcast with me, or that's actually one of my brothers. And I'm a sportscaster when I'm not principaling. So a few of our considerations that we looked at when we went down the road of innovation pathways was leveraging and strategizing with central office, with school committee, school improvement goals, especially since a lot of us, when we develop our school improvement plans, do so with parent and community input. And then really trying to identify who industry and higher education partners could be that could support real world application. And I think one of the things that is important that Karen really highlighted, and I think is consistent for a lot of us who've been in the pathway in this practice for a number of years, is that there has to be a nexus between what happens in the school and what happens in the so-called real world. There really has to be that explicit connection made because the industry partners are going to want to know that what's going on in the classroom is connected to what they're doing and vice versa. It also enhances really the relationship in curriculum instruction and assessment design. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how we engage, or some good practices for engaging industry in helping drive curriculum and instruction. And in terms of those business partnerships, the who, when, where, and how I think we're all clear on the why. But the who, when, the where, and the how can sometimes be a bit more complicated, particularly since all of us have different schedules. None of them are perfect. And, you know, the 7-period, 6-period, 5-period days that many of us operate on are very different than what our industry partners have or expect. And so too are their schedules. I always share that operational costs are important for everyone to be aware of, whether we're talking about the teacher salaries that drive these programs, the equipment. For us, we have 4 pathways, but I'm going to speak mostly about our manufacturing pathway because it's the oldest one that we have. We've had it for 4 years, and it's certainly our most robust. But when we talk about operational costs, and some of the compromises that are made, professional development, training, some of that really is done well when it's done in concert with business partners. For example, one of our newest pieces of equipment is something called a Tormach, which is a kind of milling machine that is used really specifically by a number of our local manufacturers. I don't know how to use a Tormach, and I actually don't know if our teacher knew how to use a Tormach. But our interns going out into the manufacturing world really needed to be able to apply their level 1, level 2 MACWIC skills in a Tormach environment. And so now we have a Tormach. It has involved our finding time for our teachers to learn how to use it. It's having them have time to interface with business partners on the best way to use it, and how to train people on it. And those are hidden costs. You don't always see that in like the cost of how you do business with, say, a professional development or a substitute or a coverage that you may have to make the times work so people can talk. So for us, our variables became who are the business partners. And while we started with a list of the initial 2, it's grown to a list of about 40 places. 2 years ago, we decided to really restructure a role that hadn't been in existence in our school. You know, Karen works as an internship coordinator. We don't have one at Uxbridge High School. Some other schools that are out there may have a pathways coordinator. We don't have one of those at Uxbridge High School. We used our Dean of Students position and crafted it around supervising internships, which a lot of schools were doing either piecemeal or adding it on to a stipend, or helping having a guidance counselor do it, or somebody who would do it as part of their school day. And I'm going to share the reason why I'm so direct about this idea of the Dean of Students is I know what a lot of people have as a perception of what a Dean of Students do, and I'm going to share a little bit about what that meant for our overall school culture in having our Dean of Students be involved in pre-professional skills as opposed to just being a policeman. We also became more fluent with labor market data. And if you have not gone through the Department of Labor's statistics on where jobs are going and what jobs are growing in a field, it's a really fascinating exercise to take. And it's one we actually did with our faculty probably about 2.5 years ago. Because it was an easy virtual faculty meeting to do. You could do a real look and see at the different fields that were growing, and how did those connect, not necessarily directly, but even indirectly with some of the coursework we were offering here. For example, one of the biggest growth areas in the Central Mass region had to do with like engineering and project management. Well, we don't teach project management at Uxbridge High School, but if you have a background in engineering, it might be something that leads you towards project management. And that was going to be a field that was going to grow. And then how do we marry the two? How do we marry labor market data, their needs, and what our business partners are? How do we marry that with schools? How do we take those two things and put them together? We have a number of partners for our different pathways, and we have a local dojo for whom we do all of their social media and graphic design work. We do a ton of work for our local cable, broadcasting, graphics, video, editing, and so on and so forth. In manufacturing, we're fortunate to have several companies in our local area where we've placed students. And on the business side, actually, some of those business pathways are also places that we put kids for manufacturing, like Milford Cabinet. Every one of those manufacturers has a business component. And I think that's something when you get into all companies, whether they're large or small, have the opportunity to maybe present have different needs that they can present to you for options. But the question is, how do you get them there? And I have said that your best friend is the site visit. The best thing that any educator can do is invite business partners into the building. And we bring educators to job sites, and we bring the job site to the educator. And a great example of this, a couple of years ago, I went to Lenza, to one of our engineering companies right here in Uxbridge, with one of our teachers, our assistant principal, actually a school committee member came, and we went out to this company and they took us out on the floor, and we had to wear these like special suits with like booties that you put on your feet that kept you from getting like shocked to death by the electromagnetic field of the equipment. It was really fascinating, but it was a moment for a lot of us to realize like our students could walk into this environment, and this is not what manufacturing is, what a lot of people think of. And we have to try and socialize that message. And I know that's something Karen and I talk about a lot, is the way these jobs look now is maybe different than what the perceptions of people could have been. We then needed to bring the job site folks into our building and ask some questions. And when I write the question, what kind of capital can be offered, I can't overstate this enough. Do not ask for money. This is not about money. This is not about people writing you a check. This is not about people giving you a donation. The capital that we want is capital in the form of feedback. It's capital in the form of knowledge. It's capital in the form of support for a student project. It's ideas. It's their seat at a table of our advisory panel. That is the capital that business can offer. And when they do, they may come along and say, well, can we buy you anything? And that's great. But the reality is you don't want to rely on people's checkbooks to make your business go as a school. So we really try to ask questions like, okay, can you watch this class and tell us how can we integrate in something that's important to your business to pathway A, B, or C? And there's two lines of thinking there. I'll get into both of them really quick in a second. There's a compromise. It's not personal when you go to a teacher and say, you know, I really appreciate that you teach A, B, or C, but the business partner needs us to focus on D. The teacher might love, the example I often use for me is I loved teaching Chaucer. But, you know, son of a gun, if 13th century British poetry doesn't do it for everybody. And, you know, as much as my students, I would love to teach them all of Chaucer, maybe I have to back up on it and not do as much of that when the business partner says, we really need you to teach the kids how to write a report. We need them to understand how to interpret a graph and put together information in a different kind of way. And an English teacher can do that as part of their term papering. So it's not a personal decision when we ask people to make some compromises. But when we respect that compromise, and then again, I say the site visit's your best friend. It's not a one-time site visit. You invite people back and you say, hey, here's how we implemented your idea in class A, class B, class C. I should probably come up with different variables, but that really does matter because then they have skin in the game. And then the business partner realizes, well, gee, they actually are listening to our feedback and they're trying to support what I'm trying to do. It makes your second ask much, much easier. So when they observe classes and they ask for feedback, we always feed people. Lunches are good, breakfasts are good. But we also try to then determine a way for our business partners to provide concrete feedback on projects. We do Zoom calls. Our kids right now are working on prototypes and for their engineering projects. And as part of that, they're going to work with a couple of our company's patent lawyers to make sure that the work that they're doing doesn't violate any laws. It's not just technical areas. We can have people from the business partners coming in and meeting with us in our social studies, in our math, and our English classes, because they all have the ability to interact with, things like communication and applied math skills. Our upper level Spanish classes talk about language in the workplace. And, as the students are sitting for a seal of biliteracy, which is a great credential for students to have, they're doing so in a really concrete and applied way that our business partners can then say, well, gee, we have a couple of people who are bilingual. They can come in and talk to you about manufacturing in Spanish. And that changes the discourse significantly. And again, we talk about that real world application. It becomes very pragmatic very quickly. We partner with other schools, I think, for a lot of places to make sure that, Karen mentioned this, and I think it's an important point. Our Chamber of Commerce is really helpful, but we also don't want to cannibalize each other. Karen is a couple miles down the road. There's another school the other direction, west of us, that's also looking at a manufacturing pathway. It's really important for us to work together because our kids are going to have to work together. And I think this is a big shift in the mindset of areas that are so used to just trying to beat each other at football. We really need to try and leverage collaboration. And, my best friend in college was a Yankees fan, but we were great friends. And you can work together and then root for different teams or root for different laundry on the weekends, and that's okay. But the reality is that that's the workforce, and we can model that for our students. The last point here is something I got from my colleagues in the CAPS network, which I'm not going to talk about much today. I ask business folks, what's the 10th project on your list? If you're like me, you have these long to-do lists. We ask our business partners, what's 10th on the list? Because chances are what's 10th on the list stays 10th on the list. There's always something else that becomes more important. Well, that 10th on the list project can become something our kids can do. Now, the understanding is that our students who do the 10th on the list project, that might take 30 hours for a full-time employee. It might take 40 hours for a full-time employee. If that's the case, it's probably going to take a high school kid a semester. And as long as people are okay with that, and the 10th on the list project is probably not going to be done in that semester anyways, if it's done real time at the company, it's a good experience for our folks and for our kids. Now, that means occasionally having check-ins, and it can be done virtually. And that's leveraged some opportunities for us when our students can't travel, or they have schedules that mean that a 3 o'clock meeting time is better. We also ask the question, what skills do you want employees to have moving forward? And where are the students' strengths and opportunities for growth, or even to avoid? Because if there's a job site that really requires some students to be, let's say, vocal in their ability to share and accept criticism or feedback, and you have a student that that when they're a really great student, but the second they hear the word, that wasn't very good, they turn into the pet you didn't see is our tortoise. He goes right back into his shell. And that's something that I think is really important, that we do a lot in our school around standards-based grading and around skill assessment, and marrying skills to what the students need is really important, and having them go in with a sense of understanding of this is where our employees are needed to be strong and where they are or are not strong. That's a good dialogue for us to have between intern and employee and employer, rather, right at the onset. And we focus on the same skills. You've all seen these as, the Mass Work-Based Learning Plan, and we focus on those in class. So when we work with our industry partners, they've heard the same things and we're all talking the same language, which is particularly important. One of the things that's actually quite important, one of the things we've done a lot more on is on workplace culture and policy. I'll give you the example I give is we had somebody intern last year at a nursing home, And she came back and was offering her feedback and said, yeah, just everybody's just so old. And it's, well, what were you expecting? You need to understand the workplace culture before you get there. It was a geriatric care unit. You signed up for this, and now we're going to have to make the most of it. But it underscored for us the need for us to help people understand what the culture of a workplace is before they walk in, even though they're only 17, 18 years old. I mentioned the Dean of Students, and I do want to share this. These are our statistics in Uxbridge of our enrollment and discipline. And you could see our enrollment went up a couple years ago, and we left 2021 off of this, mainly because I prefer to think that year never happened. But also because the data was really skewed. It's hard to get good data in a year where half the kids aren't in school every day. So in 2018-19, we added the 8th grade to Uxbridge, and that's why our enrollment went up. But the one thing you see is that the number of disciplinary write-ups has consistently declined, and the number of students that have been written up has also consistently declined from the year before I arrived in Uxbridge till now. And that 126 also reflects a lot of last year behaviors, which I think most of us would agree were pretty juvenile things. There were about 40 things in there that are like bus write-ups, or 40 kids that had really minor, like just general disrespect in class or hallway goofing around. Our Dean of Students makes connections with our 9th, or actually starting in our 8th and 9th grade, about what it's like to be a good employee and a good citizen. And that allows us to use internships and the business partner as a carrot for our seniors. And as a result, students behave better over time. Our number of failures has declined. Our number of disciplinary referrals has declined. And I do attribute a lot of that to the fact that there's this whole school, whole community understanding to the nexus between those workplace skills and life after high school. And we coach that in as early as 8th grade. The last thing that I will say is that this idea of soft skill integration or essential skill integration is not just the responsibility in any school of our technical courses. We do try to get some traditional teacher buy-in, and as a result, they're using the same language as well. Now, one of the things that's meant for us as a goal this year is trying to embed, some universal design principles and some assessment practices that allow students to practice the skills they're not great at, while really honing and leveraging the ones that they're good at, and getting feedback from industry, while also helping them realize their why. So there's a lot nestled into that comes up as worked through with our business folks. The other thing to be prepared to is fail. Not every relationship that's going to happen with a business partner is going to go great. Not every internship is going to be perfect. And not every partnership that you have with a business partner is going to be perfect from the beginning. And we use this as an opportunity to model the engineering design process, that this year might be a prototype and we have to test it. And there may be some things that aren't great that we revise and go back and redo. But failure isn't a bad thing. And sometimes, when you sit down with a business partner and they say, hey, we could really use help teaching subject X, and you teach subject X and the kids don't get it, that's okay. It's a good conversation to have with the business partners. So I'm going to stop there. There's my email, our phone number. We love company. Come visit. We love hosting people, and I hope I didn't go too far over time. I tried to go quickly.
No worries, Mike. Thank you so much. There are so many nuggets in both Karen and Mike's presentations about the activities they've engaged in, the strategies that they have used, but also I think it's important to really note the mindsets that you're both talking about bringing to the work of building and sustaining partnerships. And I'm hearing a lot about creativity and optimism and persistence. So I want to invite anybody in the audience who wants to either unmute and ask a question or put a question in the chat right now to do that. Before we go to our closing activities, does anybody want to ask a question? I'm going to put my screen back up so that I can also share a couple of reminders about upcoming opportunities for our network.
Please,
Nancy,
anyone?
I can answer that question. Nancy
Great.
Chinchetta, or I hope I said your last name correctly, says typical responsibilities of the Dean of Students at Uxbridge. So our Dean of Students, and I could put up the job responsibilities, but our Dean of Students assists during the day with both, sort of your typical like low-level student deportment. He does not observe classes and he does not evaluate teachers. He does monitor. We have an app that we use for internships. We use an app called ImBlaze. I'll put that in the chat, that we use for supervising and supporting students while they're in internship. He monitors that to make sure kids are actually checking in. They have a responsibility to that. He also provides the students with reflection questions on a bi-weekly basis and meets with all the interns at least once a week, if not twice, or at least every other week. He has a cycle by which, so he's meeting with them an intern every other week, sometimes more than once. And he's also delivering direct instruction. We have in 8th grade, we have our students do a career pathways exploratory, and he goes into those classes frequently and supports the teachers with some of the skill integration lessons.
All
And
right.
he's also a volunteer football coach.
So we're getting close to the end of our time, and I just want to highlight a couple of upcoming events. You can find more information and register for any of these on the Innovation Pathways Technical Assistance website. We have a program spotlight coming up on the 17th of November, featuring the work happening at Atlantis Charter School in Fall River. We are also planning a workshop on the 15th of December that is going to be focused on support for those of you who will be completing Part B applications in the coming months. And then we'll hold office hours on the 11th of January, also targeting folks who are working on their Part B applications. We have a new cohort of peer ambassadors, and we're eager to introduce you to that whole cohort soon. So please watch the website and your email for more information about peer ambassadors and about professional learning communities. Also know that you can look into the toolkit, and specifically in section 4, that's where you'll find a lot of resources related to program outreach and external partnerships, including some marketing materials that have been shared with us by schools in our network. So please check out the toolkit. And as always, we'd like to ask that before you go today, you take a minute to complete a survey about your experience. We love hearing from you because your feedback is what helps us plan and carry out effective programming for you. So my colleague is going to put the link to our SurveyMonkey survey into the chat, and we do appreciate it if you would take a moment to complete the survey while your thoughts are fresh. But I want to wrap things up with a huge round of applause and gratitude for Karen and Mike for presenting today. We could listen to you for a lot longer than we had time for today, but really appreciate your words and your ideas. It's really inspiring. Thank you very much. And thank you to everybody who came to be part of the audience today. We hope you got some good ideas that you can take away and apply in your own work. Thank you, everybody.